Most people fail not because of enemies, but because they react wrongly.
Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you move through this world forever. There's a specific behavior that people use to pull you off your center, to drain your energy, to steal your peace, and most people spend their entire lives falling for it. They react. They defend. They explain. They engage. And every single time they do, they lose a little piece of themselves. I'm not going to let that be you anymore. Not in 2026. Not ever again. Because the moment you understand what I'm about to share with you, you'll see these manipulations coming from a mile away, and you'll have the strength to do absolutely nothing. And that nothing, that's going to be your greatest power. Let me start by painting you a picture. Someone walks into your life. Maybe it's someone you work with. Maybe it's someone you used to be close to. Maybe it's even family, and they say something designed to get under your skin. It could be a subtle dig, a backhanded compliment, a question that isn't really a question, but an accusation wrapped in curiosity. And immediately, you feel it. That heat rising in your chest. That urge to correct them, to set the record straight, to make them understand. And before you know it, you're in it. You're explaining yourself. You're defending your choices. You're trying to prove something to someone who never wanted to understand you in the first place. They wanted a reaction, and you gave it to them. That's the trap. And I've watched it destroy people. I've watched brilliant, talented, strong individuals get pulled into pointless arguments with people who don't matter. I've watched them waste hours, days, weeks of their mental energy trying to make someone see their perspective who has already decided not to.
How you respond when people hurt you reveals your level of maturity. White medium star.
I've watched them lose sleep, lose focus, lose their sense of self, all because they couldn't recognize what was happening. Someone baited them, and they bit. So here's what I need you to understand right now, before we go any further. When someone tries to provoke you, when someone says something designed to get you riled up, when someone throws out bait to see if you'll bite, your reaction is exactly what they're after. Your emotional response is the prize. Your loss of composure is their victory. And the moment you give them that reaction, you've handed them power over your internal state. You've let someone else dictate how you feel. You've given them control over your peace. And I don't know about you, but I decided a long time ago that nobody gets that kind of access to me anymore. Nobody gets to reach inside my chest and twist my emotions around just because they're bored, insecure, or looking for entertainment. Nobody gets to disturb my peace just because they lack their own. And the way I protect that, I don't react. I observe, I recognize the game, and I refuse to play.
If you've ever reacted wrongly and paid the price, stay with me.
Now, let me be clear about something. When I say don't react, I'm not telling you to be passive. I'm not telling you to let people walk all over you or to accept disrespect without consequence. There's a massive difference between being a doormat and being unbothered. A doormat absorbs everything and does nothing. An unbothered person sees everything, assesses the situation, and responds from a place of power, not emotion. They don't need to prove anything. They don't need to defend themselves to people who aren't genuinely interested in understanding. They simply move differently. They operate on a different frequency, and that frequency, it's untouchable. Think about the people in your life who have real power.
If you've ever reacted wrongly and paid the price, stay with me.
I'm not talking about power in terms of status or money or influence. I'm talking about people who have mastered themselves. People who don't get rattled. People who can hear criticism, insults, provocations, and just let it roll off them like water off a duck's back. Those people terrify the manipulators, because manipulators need your reaction. They need you to get defensive. They need you to engage. That's how they feel powerful. That's how they validate their own existence. But when you don't give them that reaction, when you just look at them calmly and say nothing, they don't know what to do with you. You've just removed their power source. I remember years ago, I was in a situation where someone was constantly trying to provoke me. Every conversation, every interaction, there was some little comment designed to get under my skin. And for a while, I engaged. I explained myself. I defended my choices. I tried to make this person understand where I was coming from. And you know what happened? Nothing changed. The provocations continued. Because it was never about understanding. It was about control. It was about seeing if they could make me dance. And I was dancing beautifully. Then one day, something shifted inside me. I realized I was giving this person way too much real estate in my mind. I was thinking about their comments hours after they were made. I was rehearsing responses in my head. I was building arguments and counter-arguments for conversations that hadn't even happened yet. And I thought to myself, this is insane. Why am I letting this person have this much influence over my mental state?
If you've ever reacted wrongly and paid the price, stay with me.
So I made a decision. I stopped responding. Not in a dramatic way. Not with some big announcement or confrontation. I just stopped feeding the dynamic. The next time they made a provocative comment, I smiled slightly, said nothing of substance, and changed the subject. The time after that, I just gave a brief, non-committal response and moved on. And you know what happened? They escalated. They tried harder. They made more pointed comments. They got more obvious with their provocations because they could feel their power slipping away. They could sense that their tactics weren't working anymore, and that drove them crazy. But I stayed calm. I stayed centered. And eventually, they stopped, because there's no fun in baiting someone who won't bite. There's no satisfaction in provoking someone who won't get provoked. And more importantly, I got my peace back.
Silence is sometimes a response.
And that's when I realized something profound. Most of the drama in our lives exists because we keep feeding it. We keep giving our energy to things and people that don't deserve it. We keep reacting when we should be observing. We keep engaging when we should be withdrawing. So let me tell you exactly what I mean when I say never react when someone does this in 2026. I'm talking about those moments when someone is clearly trying to get a rise out of you. When someone asks you a loaded question.
Discipline is louder than reaction.
When someone makes a comment designed to make you feel defensive. When someone brings up your past just to watch you squirm. When someone compares you to others in a way that's meant to diminish you. When someone questions your decisions not out of genuine curiosity but out of judgment. When someone tries to make you explain yourself, justify yourself, prove yourself to them. In all of those moments, your instinct is going to be to respond, to defend, to explain, to set the record straight. And I'm telling you don't. Because here's what they're really doing. They're testing you. They're seeing if they can control your emotional state. They're checking if they still have power over you. And every time you respond emotionally, every time you get defensive, every time you feel the need to explain yourself, you're confirming that yes, they do have that power. You're showing them exactly where your buttons are so they can push them again next time. You're training them to keep doing this to you. But when you don't react, when you stay calm and composed, when you respond with indifference or simple, unbothered acknowledgement, you're sending a completely different message. You're saying, I don't need to defend myself to you. I don't need your approval. I don't need you to understand my choices. I'm completely at peace with who I am and what I'm doing, and your opinion doesn't shake that foundation. And that kind of energy, that kind of unshakable self-possession, it changes everything. Now,
most people fail not because of enemies, but because they react wrongly.
I want to address something important here because I know some of you are thinking, but what if they're making valid points? What if there's truth in what they're saying? And that's a fair question. So let me clarify. There's a difference between someone offering genuine feedback or constructive criticism and someone trying to provoke you. You can tell the difference by the energy behind it. Genuine feedback comes from a place of care. It's specific. It's offered with the intention to help you grow. It doesn't have that edge to it, that little twist designed to hurt. Provocation, on the other hand, is designed to trigger an emotional response. It's vague enough to be plausibly deniable, but pointed enough to sting. It comes with a certain energy that watching, waiting, hoping to see you react. When someone offers you genuine feedback, even if it's hard to hear, you can feel the difference. Your defensive response might still activate, but underneath it, there's a recognition that this person cares about you and wants to see you succeed. With provocation, there's no care underneath. There's just the desire to see you lose your composure. And once you start tuning into that difference, Once you start feeling for that underlying energy, you'll become much better at knowing when to engage and when to stay silent. But here's the thing most people miss. Even when someone is making a valid point, you still don't owe them a reaction in the moment. You can take what they said, consider it privately, decide if there's any truth to it, and then make changes accordingly, all without giving them the satisfaction of seeing you rattled.
You don't win every battle by fighting.
You can be someone who learns and grows without being someone who gets defensive and reactive. Those are not mutually exclusive things. In fact, the most growth happens when you can hear difficult truths without your ego getting in the way. And your ego doesn't get in the way when you're not trying to defend yourself to someone else. Your ego gets activated when you feel threatened. But when you're secure in yourself, when you know who you are and what you stand for, criticism doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like information. And you can process information calmly. Let me give you another example. Let's say you've made a major life decision. Maybe you've changed careers. Maybe you've ended a relationship. Maybe you've moved to a new city. Maybe you've started a business. Whatever it is, it's your decision, and you're committed to it. Now someone comes along, could be a friend, could be family, could be an acquaintance, and they question your decision. Not in a supportive, tell me more about this way, but in that judgmental, are you sure that's wise way, that tone that implies you're making a mistake.
Your future is too valuable for emotional decisions.
That energy that suggests they know better than you about your own life. Your first instinct might be to explain yourself, to lay out all your reasoning, to convince them that you made the right choice, to defend your decision against their doubt. But here's what I've learned. People who question your decisions aren't actually looking for your reasoning. If they were genuinely curious or concerned, they'd ask different questions. They'd say, what led you to this decision? Or, how are you feeling about this change? They wouldn't come at you with judgment disguised as concern. So, when you feel that defensive energy rising, when you feel the urge to explain and justify, stop, take a breath, recognize what's happening. They're baiting you, and you don't need to take that bait. Instead, you can respond with something simple and unbothered. I appreciate your concern, but I'm good with my decision. That's it. No explanation, no justification. No defending yourself. Just a calm acknowledgement and a boundary, and then move on. Change the subject. End the conversation if you need to. But don't get pulled into explaining yourself to someone who has already decided you're wrong. It's a waste of your energy, and it gives them way too much importance in your decision-making process. Because here's the truth.
Maturity is revealed in restraint, not reaction.
The people who truly support you don't need extensive explanations. They trust you. They believe in you. They know you're capable of making good decisions for yourself. And the people who don't support you, no amount of explanation will satisfy them. They've already made up their minds. So why waste your breath trying to change their perception? Why give them that much power over your peace? This is something I wish I'd understood earlier in life.
Silence is sometimes a response.
I spent so many years trying to make people understand me, trying to get people to see my perspective, trying to justify my choices to people who were never going to approve anyway. And all it did was drain me. All it did was keep me stuck in this cycle of seeking validation from people who weren't capable of giving it. And the moment I stopped doing that, the moment I decided that I don't need everyone to understand me, that's when I found real peace. That's when I found real power. Now, let's talk about a specific tactic that people use, and it's one you need to watch out for in 2026 and beyond. It's what I call the innocent question manipulation. Someone asks you a question that seems innocent on the surface, but it's loaded. So when are you going to settle down? Don't you think you should be further along by now? Are you still doing that thing?
Not every action deserves a response.
Have you thought about what happens if this doesn't work out? These questions aren't really questions. They're judgments dressed up as curiosity. They're designed to make you feel inadequate, defensive, or uncertain about your path. And here's the brilliant thing about this tactic from the manipulator's perspective. If you get upset, they can act like you're being too sensitive. I was just asking a question. Why are you getting so defensive? They get to provoke you and then make you feel bad for being provoked. It's a double win for them, but only if you take the bait. Only if you react emotionally. Only if you let them see that they got to you. So when someone hits you with one of these innocent questions, your response should be just as unbothered as if they'd asked you about the weather. I'm good where I am. I'm not worried about that. That's not something I'm focused on right now. Brief, calm, confident responses that don't invite further discussion, and then you move on.
Principles are tested when emotions rise.
You don't elaborate, you don't defend. You don't try to convince them that your path is valid. You just state your position and let it be. Because here's what happens when you do this consistently. People stop asking those questions. They stop trying to provoke you because they're not getting the reaction they want. They're not getting the satisfaction of watching you squirm. They're not getting the power rush of making you feel defensive. And eventually, they move on to someone else who will give them that reaction. And you get to keep your peace. But I want to go deeper here because this isn't just about not reacting to other people's provocations. This is about fundamentally changing the way you see yourself in relation to others. Most people live their lives feeling like they need to justify themselves, like they need to explain their choices, like they need everyone to understand and approve of their path. And that mindset keeps them in constant reaction mode. They're always defending, always explaining, always trying to prove something. And it's exhausting. But there's another way to live. There's a way where you're so secure in yourself, so clear about your values and your direction, that other people's opinions just don't land the same way. They might say something critical, but it doesn't penetrate.
Not every action deserves a response.
It doesn't shake your foundation. Because your foundation isn't built on their approval. It's built on your own self-knowledge, your own values, your own vision for your life. And when you have that, when you truly have that, reactions become unnecessary. Because there's nothing to defend. You're not trying to prove anything to anyone. You're just living your life according to your own standards.
Wisdom often chooses silence.
And I'm going to tell you something that might sound harsh, but it's true. Most people's opinions about your life are none of your business. Think about that for a second. Someone forms an opinion about your choices, your path, your decisions, and that opinion exists in their head. It's their thought. It's their perspective. It's their filter through which they view the world. It has nothing to do with the objective reality of your life. It's just their interpretation. And you are under no obligation to concern yourself with other people's interpretations of your reality. You are under no obligation to manage their perceptions. You are under no obligation to make them comfortable with your choices. This is so important, I'm going to say it again. You are under no obligation to make other people comfortable with your choices. Let that sink in. Because so much of our reactive behavior comes from this unconscious belief that we need to make others comfortable with how we're living. We need to reassure them. We need to help them understand. We need to get their approval. But why? Who said that's our job? Who said that their comfort is more important than our peace? When you really internalize this, when you really understand that other people's comfort with your life is not your responsibility, something shifts. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your choices. You stop trying to get people on board with your vision because you realize that's not necessary.
How you respond when people hurt you reveals your level of maturity. White medium star.
The people who are meant to support you will do so without requiring extensive justifications. And the people who aren't meant to support you, they won't, no matter what you say. So why waste your energy trying to convert them? Now, let's talk about what happens when you actually implement this. When you stop reacting to provocations. When you stop defending yourself to people who aren't actually interested in understanding. When you start protecting your energy and your peace. At first, people are going to be confused. They're used to getting a certain response from you. They're used to being able to push your buttons. And when you suddenly stop giving them that response, they're going to be thrown off. And some of them are going to escalate. They're going to try harder to get that reaction. They're going to be more pointed, more direct, more provocative.
Wisdom often chooses silence.
Because they can feel their power over you slipping away. And they want it back. This is the phase where you have to be strongest. This is where you have to hold your ground. Because if you cave during the escalation phase, If you give them the reaction they're looking for after they've ramped up their efforts, you've just taught them that they need to push harder to get to you. You've raised the bar for how much provocation it takes to shake you, but you haven't actually freed yourself from the dynamic. So during this escalation phase, you have to be a rock. You have to be unmovable. You have to consistently, repeatedly, calmly refuse to take the bait no matter how good they get at casting it. And here's what happens if you hold strong. They eventually give up because it stops being worth the effort, because they're not getting the payoff they're looking for, and they move on. And you've just freed yourself from a toxic dynamic that was draining your energy and stealing your peace. You've just taken back your power. You've just shown yourself that you're stronger than your impulse to react. And that's a feeling you can't put a price on. But there's more that happens. When you stop reacting to provocations, when you stop letting people pull you into their drama, you start noticing something. You start noticing how much energy you have. You start noticing how clear your mind is. You start noticing how much more focused you are on your own goals and your own growth. Because all that energy you were spending on defending yourself, on explaining yourself, on reacting to other people's provocations, that energy is now available for you. That energy is now available for building the life you actually want instead of defending the life you have. And people notice this shift in you.
Not every action deserves a response.
They notice that you're more grounded. They notice that you're more confident. They notice that you can't be shaken as easily. And the interesting thing is, this actually commands more respect than all that defending and explaining ever did. Because when you're constantly defending yourself, you actually look insecure. You look like you're not sure about your own choices. You look like you need validation. But when you're unbothered, when you're solid in yourself, when you don't need to prove anything to anyone, that's when people start respecting you. That's when they start treating you differently. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it through your unshakable composure.
How you respond when people hurt you reveals your level of maturity. White medium star.
Let me talk about another dimension of this that's really important. When we react to provocations, when we get defensive, when we engage in those pointless arguments, we're not just giving away our power in the moment. We're also replaying those interactions in our minds afterward. We're thinking about what they said. We're thinking about what we said. We're thinking about what we should have said. We're running through alternative scenarios. We're building better arguments. We're getting worked up all over again, except now we're doing it to ourselves in the privacy of our own mind. This is what I call the mental replay trap. And it's just as damaging as the initial interaction, maybe more so. Because at least during the actual interaction, there's a beginning and an end. But in your mind, you can replay that interaction indefinitely. You can keep that fight going for days, weeks, months. You can stay angry at someone long after they've forgotten the interaction even happened. And all of that is energy you're not putting into your own growth and development. All of that is time you're not spending on building your life.
If you've ever reacted wrongly and paid the price, stay with me.
All of that is peace you're sacrificing for someone who doesn't even occupy space in your actual reality anymore, only in your mind. So, part of not reacting isn't just about what you do in the moment, it's about what you do after the moment. It's about not letting that interaction follow you home. It's about not giving it space in your mind. It's about recognizing when you're starting to replay and consciously choosing to stop. It's about redirecting your attention to something productive, something that actually serves you. Because if you win the battle in the moment by not reacting but then lose the war by replaying it in your mind for the next 3 days, you haven't really freed yourself. You've just internalized the battlefield. This is where mental discipline comes in. And I'm not going to lie to you, this part is hard. It's actually harder than not reacting in the moment because at least in the moment there's an external trigger that you can identify. But when you're alone with your thoughts and that replay starts happening, there's no external person to not react to. It's just you and your mind. And your mind wants to process, wants to analyze, wants to prepare for next time, wants to win the argument retroactively. And you have to be the one who says, no, we're not doing this. We're not giving this person any more of our time or energy. It's done. We're moving on. And you have to do that every time the replay starts.
Self-control is a higher form of power.
Every time you catch yourself thinking about what they said or what you should have said, every single time, you have to consciously redirect. And at first, it's going to feel like you're doing it constantly. Like every few minutes you have to pull yourself back from that mental replay. But stick with it, because gradually the replays become less frequent, the pull becomes weaker, your mind learns that this isn't where we go anymore. And eventually you achieve something really beautiful. You achieve the ability to let things go in real time. Someone says something provocative, you don't react, and then you just move on with your day. It doesn't follow you. It doesn't take up residence in your mind. It's just a moment that happened and then passed, like any other moment. That's freedom. That's real freedom. Not the freedom to say whatever you want to whoever you want, but the freedom to not be controlled by what others say to you. The freedom to let things bounce off you. The freedom to protect your peace no matter what's happening around you. And when you achieve that kind of freedom, your whole life changes.
Most people fail not because of enemies, but because they react wrongly.
Because you're no longer available for drama. You're no longer available for manipulation. You're no longer a puppet that people can make dance by pulling the right strings. You're sovereign. You're self-determined. You're untouchable in the best possible way. Now, I want to address something that comes up a lot when I talk about this concept. People ask me, but isn't it important to stand up for yourself? Isn't it important to defend your boundaries? Aren't you just being a doormat if you don't react? And I understand that concern because we've been taught that standing up for ourselves means fighting back, means defending ourselves verbally, means making sure people know they can't treat us a certain way. But here's what I've learned. There's a massive difference between standing up for yourself and getting pulled into someone else's game. Standing up for yourself means having clear boundaries and enforcing them. It means removing yourself from situations and relationships that don't serve you. It means saying no when something doesn't align with your values. It means taking action to protect your peace and your well-being.
When you live by principles, people may misunderstand you, but destiny will honor you.
But defending yourself verbally to someone who's trying to provoke you, that's not standing up for yourself. That's dancing to their tune. That's letting them control your emotional state. That's giving them exactly what they want. Real strength, real power lies in being able to see someone trying to provoke you and choosing not to engage. It lies in being able to hear criticism and not feel compelled to defend yourself. It lies in being so secure in who you are that other people's opinions simply don't require a response. That's not being a doormat. That's being unbothered. That's being unmovable. That's being in complete control of yourself. A doormat absorbs and does nothing. An unbothered person sees what's happening, makes a conscious choice about how to respond, and then moves on without carrying it with them. Those are two very different things. And the way you enforce boundaries without being reactive is simple. You act. You don't argue. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, you don't engage in a debate about why they should respect you. You just reduce your availability to them. You create distance. You stop making yourself accessible to someone who's shown you they don't value that access. You don't announce it. You don't make it a dramatic thing. You just quietly restructure your life so that you're not exposed to their behavior anymore.
Principles keep you stable when emotions want control.
That's how you stand up for yourself. Through action, not reaction. Through choices, not arguments. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you have someone in your life who constantly makes little digs at you. Little comments about your weight, your job, your relationship status, your choices, whatever. And every time they do it, you've historically gotten defensive or tried to explain yourself or argued with them. And it never changes anything. They keep doing it. So you decide you're going to implement what I'm teaching you. The next time they make a dig, you don't react emotionally. You maybe give a brief, neutral response or no response at all, and then you continue with your day. But here's the key. You also start limiting your time with this person. Not in a dramatic I'm cutting you off way, but just by being less available. When they call, maybe you don't pick up every time. When they invite you to things, maybe you're busy more often than you used to be. You're not explaining this to them. You're not having a confrontation about their behavior. You're just quietly adjusting the amount of access they have to you.
Self-control is a higher form of power.
And over time, one of two things happens. Either they get the message and adjust their behavior, or they don't, and you've successfully created enough distance that their behavior no longer affects you. Either way, you win. And you did it without a single dramatic confrontation or defensive argument. That's the power of non-reactive boundary enforcement. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to make them understand why their behavior is wrong. You're just protecting yourself by controlling what you expose yourself to. And that takes so much less energy than trying to change someone else's behavior through argument and explanation. It's the difference between building a wall to keep the rain off you versus standing in the rain trying to convince it to stop falling. One is productive. The other is insane. Here's another thing I want you to understand. When you stop reacting to people's provocations, when you become this calm, grounded, unbothered person, you're going to make some people uncomfortable. And that's okay. Actually, it's better than okay. It's necessary. Because the people who are uncomfortable with your growth are often the people who were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. They liked being able to push your buttons.
Most people fail not because of enemies, but because they react wrongly.
They liked having that power over you. They liked knowing they could get you riled up whenever they wanted. And now you're taking that away from them. Of course they're uncomfortable. But their discomfort is not your problem. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself. Your responsibility is to protect your peace and build your life according to your values. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, that's information about them, not about you. It tells you that they valued having power over you more than they valued your well-being. It tells you that they were invested in keeping you reactive and defensive. And honestly, those are people you're better off with less of in your life anyway. You're going to lose some people when you start living this way. Some people are only in your life because you were available for their drama. Some people only maintain the relationship because you were reactive and they enjoyed that dynamic. And when you change, when you become unavailable for that, they're going to drift away. And I know that can be sad. I know it can feel like a loss. But I promise you, it's not. It's a clearing. It's making space. It's removing relationships that were built on an unhealthy foundation so that healthier relationships can come in. Because here's what happens when you embody this calm, non-reactive, boundaried energy. You start attracting different people. You start attracting people who respect boundaries. You start attracting people who don't play games. You start attracting people who communicate directly instead of through provocation and manipulation.
Your future is too valuable for emotional decisions.
You start attracting people who are secure enough in themselves that they don't need to test you or push your buttons to feel powerful. And those relationships? Those are relationships worth having. Those are relationships that feed you instead of drain you. Those are relationships built on mutual respect instead of power dynamics. So, yes, you might lose some people, but you're going to gain something so much more valuable: peace, self-respect, energy, focus, and higher quality relationships. That's a trade I'd make any day of the week. And once you experience what it's like to have your life filled with people who respect your boundaries and don't play games with you, you'll wonder why you ever tolerated anything less.
When you live by principles, people may misunderstand you, but destiny will honor you.
Now, let's talk about a specific scenario that I think a lot of people struggle with: family. Because it's one thing to create distance from a coworker or an acquaintance who's provocative, but what about when it's your mother, your sibling, your uncle, someone you have to see at holidays and family gatherings? How do you implement this non-reactive approach when you can't just reduce contact to zero? First, understand that family doesn't get a free pass to disrespect you just because they're family. Blood relation doesn't entitle anyone to unlimited access to your emotional state. You can love your family and still have boundaries with them. You can care about them and still refuse to engage in their provocations. These are not mutually exclusive things. In fact, having boundaries with family members often leads to healthier relationships in the long run because you're not building up resentment from constant boundary violations. So when a family member tries to provoke you, maybe they bring up that topic they know bothers you. Maybe they criticize your life choices at the dinner table. Maybe they ask those loaded questions in front of everyone. Your response strategy is the same. Don't take the bait. Give a brief, non-committal response and change the subject. I'm good with my choices. Thanks for caring. Hey, did anyone see that thing in the news about? Redirect. Move on. Don't get pulled into defending yourself or explaining yourself or justifying your life to people who've already decided they know better. And if they persist, if they keep pushing, you can physically remove yourself from the situation. You can say, I need to use the restroom and take a break. You can say, I'm going to step outside for some air. You can even say, I don't want to discuss this, and then actually not discuss it, even if they keep trying.
Discipline is louder than reaction.
You have permission to end conversations that aren't serving you. You have permission to protect your peace even at family gatherings. And yes, this might create some awkwardness. Yes, some people might talk about you behind your back. Yes, someone might accuse you of being sensitive or difficult. And all of that is better than sitting there absorbing disrespect just to keep the peace for everyone else while sacrificing your own. Because here's what happens when you consistently tolerate disrespect from family just because they're family. You teach them that your boundaries don't matter. You teach them that they can treat you however they want without consequences. You teach them that your peace is less important than their comfort. And that dynamic will continue for the rest of your life unless you change it. So change it. Not through dramatic confrontations or big speeches about how they need to respect you, but through consistent, quiet boundary enforcement. Through non-reactive responses, through reducing your availability when necessary, through protecting your peace no matter who's trying to disturb it.
When you live by principles, people may misunderstand you, but destiny will honor you.
I want to shift gears here and talk about something that's related but slightly different. The energy vampires in your life. You know who I'm talking about. The people who always have drama. The people who always need something. The people who call you to complain about their lives but never take your advice or make any changes. The people who want to vent to you for hours but are never available when you need support. The people who take and take and take but never give back. These people might not be directly provoking you or trying to get you to react, but they're still draining your energy. And in 2026, you need to get better at identifying these people and limiting their access to you. Because here's the thing, your energy is finite. You only have so much of it. And every minute you spend listening to someone's self-created drama is a minute you're not spending on your own growth, your own goals, your own peace. And I know that sounds harsh. I know we're supposed to be there for people. I know we're supposed to support our friends and loved ones. But there's a difference between supporting someone through a difficult time and being someone's emotional dumping ground.
Self-control is a higher form of power.
There's a difference between helping a friend who's actively working on their problems and being used as a free therapy service by someone who has no intention of changing anything. The way you can tell the difference is this. Someone who needs genuine support will take your advice sometimes. They'll make efforts to improve their situation. They'll show growth over time. They'll also be there for you when you need support. The relationship is reciprocal. But an energy vampire? They never change. They have the same problems year after year. They never take your advice. They get upset if you offer solutions because they don't actually want solutions, they want to complain. And they're never available when you need them because the relationship is entirely one-sided. It only flows one way, toward them.
Thank you for watching. If this message blessed you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it.